This is the South African flag, but did you know that for a lot of its history it had a different flag? Well, in today's video, let's find out about the symbolism behind these flags and what happened to the old one. So this is the flag of South Africa. It's one of my favorite flags in the world, and I'll tell you why in this video. Now, this flag was adopted in 1994, the year in which South Africa transitioned from an apartheid racist-based state to being one of pluralism, in which people could vote no matter what race or ethnic background they had. This South African flag has several other flags hidden inside it, and the first one of those is none other than the Dutch flag, which you might be able to tell here with the lovely red, white and blue. But that flag's orange, not red. We'll get to that. The reason there's a Dutch flag in the South African flag is because in 1652 it was the Dutch who would go on to found the first lasting European colony in what is today South Africa, around the Cape of Good Hope. And the Dutch, of course, their flag is the red, white and blue tricolour, and so that is an important flag in the history of South Africa. Now, the first flag officially will have been that of the VOC, which is the Dutch name for the East India Company. You might notice, however, that a lot of the time there is somewhat of a difference between the Dutch flags in this period on portraits, that we see some being red, white and blue as it is today, but particularly on older portraits you might also see flags that are orange, white and blue. Now, for a full explanation of this, check out this video on the subject. Suffice it to say that sometimes this is because the paint colour isn't particularly clear or flags may have faded, but there is a political distinction as well, with, very simply put, those with red, white and blue being more in favour of a republic without a strong figurehead, and those with orange, white and blue being in favour of the Princes of Orange, of course those famous Dutchmen who would go on to rule England as well for a brief spell, and therefore in Dutch this orange, white and blue flag is called the Prinsenvlag. Important for now, however, is that in 1795 and then again and permanently from 1806 onwards, the Dutch would lose the Cape Colony to the British. Wait. Now, you may be looking at the South African flag and racking your brain for how and where exactly the British flag is hidden inside this design, and it's slightly more subtle than the Dutch flag, and I'll explain for why. And this is because it's in the shade of red that we see. Now, you'll note that the red on the Union flag of the United Kingdom is a deeper shade of red, and that the colour is clearly not the orange of the Prinsenvlag. But if you mix these two colours together, you get a colour called chili red. It's a really nice colour actually, and that is where the red colour comes from on the South African flag. So we have a little nod both to the House of Orange and a nod to the British, who of course went on to rule the Cape Colony after the Dutch had been kicked out. So what about the rest of the flag? Well, let's get into that as well. So we of course have the red, white and blue, which we can get from both the British and the Dutch flags, with a mixture of the Prinsenvlag and the Union flag for its colour of chili red. Now, the other major flag that plays a part in this is the flag of the ANC. That stands for the African National Congress and has been the ruling party in South Africa since 1994. The ANC traditionally came up for the rights of black people in South Africa, who throughout its history have often been disenfranchised in favour of particularly the white minority. In terms of the flag, the ANC flag of black, green and yellow is partially inspired by the Pan-African colours, which sometimes includes yellow, but more usually is black, green and yellow. In any case, it's the flag of the ANC which adds the final three colours to the South African flag. There is also symbolism in the composition of the flag, as you might note that there is a Y shape. This can be interpreted as being two different paths, with one, the people of European extraction, so mainly British and Dutch, hence those influences from the British and Dutch flags, and then people of African extraction, hence the flag of the African National Congress, coming together onto one path, that while there is a history of division and apartheid, now they are continuing on one path. So I think that's all pretty neat when it's combined into one flag. There may also be some religious significance with this Y shape, which is that this shape is also found on the vestments of Anglican priests a lot of the time. And so because many South Africans are Christian and many are Anglican, this may also have some kind of spiritual meaning. We often find crosses on flags after all. So that is the modern South African flag, and it's actually rather interesting. One of its nicknames is Die Seskleur, which is the Afrikaans name for the sixth colour. That makes the South African flag one of only rather a few national flags in the world that have more than 3 or 4 colours. I believe the one with the most is Belize with 12. The amount of colours it has given rise to another nickname for the South African flag, which is the Regenboogvlag, or the rainbow flag, of course, with South Africa itself being referred to as the Rainbow Nation following the end of Apartheid. But in any case, that is the modern South African flag with its symbolism. But of course, we also have an older South African flag. So what then is the history behind this flag, and why did the flag change? Although that should be quite obvious at this point. That flag has its origin once again with the Dutch. I'm not going to play the music again, one time more than enough in a video. And the role of the Dutch in creating the Cape Colony. Now when they arrived, they were all sort of stroopwafel eating, bicycling, tulip growing, windmill enjoyers. But not for long! As over time, these Dutchmen would become acclimatized to Africa, their language would change and evolve, they would intermarry and intermix with various other groups, and a whole new group would be born, people that we call the Boers in English, which is the word for farmers. They generally didn't enjoy life under British rule for various reasons, and in 1835 they would commence what became known in Afrikaans as die Groot Trek, or in English, the Great Trek, trek actually being a loanword from Afrikaans. During this time, these mostly descendants of the Dutch settlers, as well as obviously mixed from other groups too, would move into the interior of the African continent and set up new republics. Now, these republics show very clearly that their flags had one big inspiration. Let's see if you can spot it. So this is why we have a lot of Dutch flags kicking around in South Africa throughout the second half of the 19th century in all these free republics. Now, 2 of these republics would go on to become very important for South African history, both for its flags and otherwise, and those would be the one on the left, the Oranje Vrystaat, and the one on the right, the Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek, or the Transvaal, as it's sometimes called. These 2 border republics would become the largest and the longest lasting of the border republics in South Africa. And it was against both of these in the first Boer War from 1880 and the second Boer War ending in 1902 that the British would fight. They would both be conquered and would become a part in 1910 of the Union of South Africa, the direct ancestor of the modern country of South Africa. This was the flag then that was chosen for this Union of South Africa, being adopted in 1928. As we can see, this flag has several flags inside it, both inside the flag but also as the base of the flag. The 3 flags inside of this flag of the Union of South Africa are from left to right, the British Union flag, the flag of the Oranje Vrystaat, and the flag of the Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek. However, you may notice that the actual base flag is simply the Dutch Prinsenvlag. So here we have 4 flags in one. But actually, we have more than 4 flags in one, because of course the Union flag is a flag of a union which itself contains 3 flags, the Scottish Saltire, the English Cross, and St. Patrick's Saltire to represent Ireland. So in that way, this flag contains not 1, not 2, not 3 or 4, but 7 flags. Although technically, you could also argue that the flag of the Oranje Vrystaat and the flag of the Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek also have the Dutch flag inside them. So then, technically, we have 9 total flags on this one flag, which I think is a record for flags. While there's an awful lot of fun flag trivia with this flag, and many Dutch flags included, there is of course one glaring and huge problem with this as a flag for the Union of South Africa. And of course the flags inside, British for the Cape Colony and Natal, and the Oranje Vrystaat and the Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek are the 4 units that made up the Union of South Africa when they were joined together. But that problem, of course, is that this flag shows the Dutch, it shows the British, and it shows the two final Boer republics. What it doesn't show, however, is the vast majority of the population of South Africa, which are, of course, people of African origin. And it's partially for this reason that this flag had to change in 1994 and that it has a bad reputation to this day. Certainly also because from 1948 onwards, this was the flag of the Apartheid state in South Africa, which did not give the same rights to people and which racially discriminated against certain groups. That means that this flag is quite a controversial symbol to this day, but did you know that actually during this time in South Africa it was also controversial, but among the proponents of the apartheid government? In fact, in 1968 there were serious talks about changing the flag. But the issue with the flag wasn't the fact that it didn't represent any of the people of African origin, but rather because it had a union flag on it in the first place, and many Afrikaners did not like the fact that this flag was present and so wanted a new design. So perhaps we might have got a flag like this. The actual flag design that was selected as a possible contender was this flag, which retains the orange, white and blue, but has a springbok on it instead, which aesthetically isn't too bad. But this never actually happened in the end. In 1982, the flag did change, but perhaps not in the way that you might think, and it's simply a change in the shade of blue that was selected. In 1994, when the apartheid regime was dismantled, one of the conditions upon which the ANC would follow a transition of power away from apartheid was that the flag would have to be changed. So several proposals were sent in for a final South African flag, some of which you can see here on the screen, although of course today the flag that was designed by Frederick Brownell was chosen. Now, it's said that Frederick Brownell also designed the flag of Namibia, of course a neighbouring state, but both his claim to have designed the South African flag and the Namibian flag has actually caused some controversy, with some conspiracy theory saying that he didn't actually design either of them. But that's something for a different time. In any case, this flag was chosen to be South Africa's new flag and was unveiled in 1994, some of those supporters of the previous regime deciding to burn the flag instead and continue using the old flag. However, today we don't see the old flag really much anymore, and in 2019 the South African court decided that the public display of the old flag of South Africa, the apartheid era flag, did constitute a hate crime, so this has now become a punishable symbol to be used. The South African white supremacist group, the Afrikaner Weerstandsbeweging, for example, uses this edited version on the right, which has edited out the Union flag and instead adds in the Afrikaner Beweging's flag in the middle as well. However, even educational displays of this flag at historic sites, for example here at the Castle of Cape Town, which has the whole row of flags starting on the right from the Dutch Prinsenvlag with the British Union flag without Ireland, the Dutch flag, the British Union flag with Ireland, the former flag of South Africa and the current flag of South Africa. This was also criticised by the ANC, and it was ordered that the castle had to remove all the flags apart from the current South African flag in 2012, although the flags are now on display inside the museum. But let me know in the comments below, do you think that at such a site as a castle one can display these flags even when this flag had been a symbol of oppression of a majority of people in South Africa, or in such a situation is it fine? And what do you think of the modern South African flag? As I said, it's one of my favourite flags. I think it's just aesthetically incredibly pleasing, and I really like the way that they have blended elements of the country's history into a flag that does represent the majority of people that live in South Africa. And so I really like it, but I'll be curious to see what you think of it in the comments below. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to stick around to the end to find out about this flag and some of the history of South Africa. As I said, I find South African history endlessly interesting, and I'd be happy to make more videos about it, about some of the linguistic aspects of Afrikaans and how the language works in South Africa, if people would find it interesting. Check out some of my other videos on similar topics in the description below, both flag topics and South African history, and I will see you next time.